What's up, everyone? Hope everyone's having a great day. We're going to get Jordan, the Daily Stoic, on here today. Just a little quick shout out to my own book here, Fatherhood, the Art of Love and Leadership. It's free on the ebook. Go get it. Everyone should use it. All right, let's get him on. Let's see. What's up, Jordan?
Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
Get these off. Look professional, right?
No, you're good. You're all good.
In the
man.
military, they
I'm
want
sure that I've got.
to talk, so I kind of got in that habit.
No, you're all good, man. No worries. No worries. Sorry for the time delay as well, too. I kind of got a little mixed up this morning, so.
No, it's good. It's crazy over here too because we're leaving. We're full-time RVers, and
Okay.
we're packing house right now and rolling towards Georgia in these next hours. I think about 3 hours we're taking off and heading north.
Oh,
Get,
nice.
get ready for good.
So are you in Florida right now, then?
Yeah, in Tampa.
Oh, you're in Tampa. Okay, yeah. I'm over in Orlando, is where I live, just north of Orlando a little bit. So.
And we had this about a month ago. I was in Orlando at KOA there for about 3 weeks, and I met up with some buddies over there. That's actually where I was finishing like my writing of my book, and my wife had there. So
nice, man. What part of Tampa are you hanging out in right now?
I'm in MacDill Air Force Base. But I went to the University of Tampa.
Okay.
That's where I commissioned as an officer, and I lived in Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, and all over Tampa. Hyde Park, Channelside, Ybor. I've lived. I consider myself like Tampa's my second home. I lived here about 10 years, but I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm a Midwest, a snowbird that just never left.
Nice. Yeah, no, we used to live out in like New Tampa area, Tampa Palms, right off like Bruceby Downs and 75 area out there. So pretty well.
Anyways, how you doing today? I know you just got done rushing to get home, man.
All good. No, it's kind of been a wild day. Got one daughter going off to like a summer camp, another daughter going off to like a daily summer camp, and yeah, I'm usually going pretty hard for like the first like 5-6 hours of the day. So I think I got my times mixed up, but no, all good, man. I'm excited to chat with you, and it's kind of fun. I don't do a whole lot of like lives. It's been more like podcasts, so I'm like my face isn't always like in my face, so kind of fun to kind of be put on the spot a little bit. I'm excited about it.
No, I do podcasts too, but I think lives are just, gives people that intimate feeling. And I know all my ex-soldiers love to see my beautiful face every day.
Totally, man. Awesome.
Anyways, I was listening to a podcast this morning, Andy Frisella. Or no, it wasn't Andy Frisella. It was Alex Hormozy. And talking about hard work being controversial right now, right? And I thought it was funny. I wanted to bring it up with you. And it was talking about like how most people these days in 2023 don't want to put hard work in. You don't see young kids trying to go and do blue-collar jobs, being bricklayers or construction, woodwork, whatever. They don't want to do that stuff. So I wanted to bring it towards us is I'm the same way. In the mornings, I'm full go, and I put in the hard work every morning. That's my time from when I wake up at 4:30 all the way until roughly 10 o'clock. Usually my wife will take over, and then we'll hit it again in the afternoon. I'll get a couple hours out. So how do we balance the hard work and being a present father?
That's a good question. Yeah, and I agree with you, man. I think hard work is there's really two challenges. I think to the concept of hard work within our generation and certainly the rising generation. I don't know what they call it, Generation Y, now maybe it's Generation Z. I don't really know what's what. Yeah. But two things. So kind of backing up all the way back to pre-World War II, I was talking about this the other day on one of my group calls with all my clients. I have twice a week we do a group call where everyone's on there. And we were talking about the concept of suffering and how within Stoicism, suffering is a reality that is part of every day. And I think we tend to look at suffering as bad because we don't recognize that it is part of what we signed up for. Whether we want to believe it or not, we signed up for this. Even if we didn't sign up for it, we're here, and we have to recognize and level with the fact that suffering and pain is a daily, minute by minute, hour by hour, year by year occurrence. And so if you look at the World War II generation, one of the reasons why they were able to go away to war and come back and kind of be okay is because they were forged in suffering. They lived in a world where they didn't have a lot of modern conveniences, and a lot of like the pain relief and pleasure creating instruments that our generation has. And so they came up through hardship. Through the 1960s, the baby boomers kind of got a little bit of pressure off of them. Certainly my parents, who are in their 60s and 70s, kind of right at the tail end of the baby boomers, a lot more convenience. And then my generation, 39 to 45, 47, we were really born of convenience. We were born of relaxation and pleasure creation. We started off with cable television when we were kids in the early 90s. We were there for the advent of mass internet access. We were there for instant messenger, and then ultimately, MySpace, and then Facebook. And then as adults, we basically were the first adult generation really to embrace like smartphones, right? So it's like for us, we have this, sorry, my phone's being kind of weird here about trying to pop out of its the stand here. But for us, I think that the biggest challenge is that we live in a world of instant gratification, and there is almost no push towards the concept of delayed gratification. So with the attack on hard work, I think that we're just a generation of people who have lived in a society of instant gratification, and we practice zero discipline in regard to that delayed gratification concept. So, is there an enemy to that? Yes. I think there is an organized enemy to that as well. I think, not to get too deep into conspiracy theories, I don't want to do that. But I do think that, if you listen to like Bedros Keuilian, Bedros talked about this a couple episodes, maybe like 10 episodes ago on his podcast, that this hierarchy of whatever you want to call it, whether it's in banking or politics or society, they want a inept, overweight, gelatinous, low tone, low energy, low level society of people, because they are controllable and they are consumers. They'll buy whatever you tell them to buy. They'll believe whatever you tell them to believe. So two things. Number one, I think that we were born out of pain relief and pleasure creation, which is our generation to the T. And then on top of that, there is an organized attempt, whether that be so organized that it's all connected, or that there are different organizations within the different tiers of power in the world that are trying to keep us from being those hardworking people, right? So there is, I think it's multi-tiered, the problem that we're looking at, and we have to be able to look at it and say, hey, there is something that is real and organized that we do have to be able to fight back against. So why is it hard? Dude, it's just constant distraction. It's constant social media. It's constant comparison, which is the thief of joy. It's constant pleasure creation. You ought to seek out after pleasure at every turn, and you ought to seek out pain relief, which just did not exist in prior generations. Like, you could not escape it. And I'll shut up. I was up at my great uncle's house. He lives north of Jacksonville, or like you'll probably be passing through it today. But he's 94 years old, and he was born right in the Georgia-Florida line, a little town called Jasper, Florida, which is right before Georgia. And he was telling me a story about how back in the old days, they lived in a house when he was young. They had no electricity. I mean, we're talking Florida, right? And you're in Tampa right now. I'm in Orlando. The weather sucks all the time in Florida. It doesn't matter what season it is. And he would say the mosquitoes were so bad. When he would walk to school, they would carry these old tin cans, these coffee cans, and they would burn palm fronds inside of them as they walked through the woods on the way to school to keep the mosquitoes away. And I asked him, like, what'd you do during the summer? He's like, yeah, it was just hot. We just dealt with it, right? And that's just a different concept to the current generation. They just don't understand it. I don't know if they ever will understand it, which is why myself as a coach and my program and other coaches like Superhuman Fathers, Kyle Carnahan, Kurt Storing, are constantly preaching the idea that we ought to be stress inoculating ourselves and putting ourselves through, daily, minute by minute, hour by hour suffering, so that we can understand and be prepared for those types of situations. So I think it's multifaceted, multi-tiered, for sure.
And I think I actually talked to Kyle last week live, And yeah, we had a great talk. And I agree with almost like 95% of what he says. I agree with. Me and him are very similar. I was a very intense military man, and now I'm kind of rewinding a little bit. But people are, you get to relax now. You're retired, but I'm still up early. I'm still crushing it in the gym. I'm still right there with my son. So going back to the hard work. Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? Some kids walking by. Campsite, man. This is a campsite life. Is expectation reality, right? So it's like the expectations are the world has to keep on moving, and we need people that are going to work hard. We need people that are going to put in the effort and actually do the work. Reality is, because we're not getting as many people as we used to. Like that when generation, not X, baby boomer generation, as they're dying off, that Xers, we're not filling that. So I'm a Gen X guy. I'm an end of Gen X. I guess people call me a Xennial or something because I was born in 81. And they make up everything. I have no idea. But the reality is those jobs aren't being filled right now. And a lot of kids are staying home. And I'm seeing all this stuff about like testosterone levels of like a 20-year-old or like a 60-year-old man right now. It's insane, right? And seeing like 1.7 million kids under 28 aren't working. They don't want to, not because they don't have to. Yeah, some are unemployed. I know that's in the statistics, but it's like that's a huge deal because I know in my 20s I was crushing it, and I was a bricklayer. I had an easy job. They're laying brick and block and stone. And I think we've got to the point where it's like the conveniences have overtaken reality, you know, and what happened to reality. So now you're watching, I'm going to tie this back to fatherhood. You're watching these young kids have kids. And when they're having kids, they have no foundation. They have nothing to land on. And then it's just like, feed them to the machine, right? And let the machine take kids. And so
I think to touch on that, I think also when you have a generation of parents who are tied to pleasure creation and pain relief, they don't want to have to deal with their kids either. So they're putting instruments of those same things in front of their kids because it's inconvenient, right? They're stuck on social media. They're stuck doom scrolling. They're stuck on Netflix. They're stuck in booze and drugs and, you know, all these different types of substances. And so, it's this vicious compounding cycle of continually putting that type of lifestyle onto that next generation. In fact, it literally is, I don't watch really any TV, but one of my favorite movies is Idiocracy. It's you've probably seen it. You know, Luke Wilson and like trying to think who else is in it. Terry Crews plays the president. You know, it's such a good movie, right? But it's so prophetic. And I remember watching it in like 2006. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that this is going to be the way the world's going to go. And it really has. And that was 500 years in the future. I'm like, dude, this is not even 20 years in the future. And we're already at almost Idiocracy level. I mean, nothing, you know, sorry, Instagram, but basically Nacho Supreme is the president right now in a different form. And you've got, you know, the #1 movie was called Ass, I think. It was just like a dude farting or something like that, you know, in Idiocracy. It's like, we're almost there at this point. And mainly because of, I would argue the biggest thing and the biggest challenge, I think, that is kind of a human sickness is selfishness. And that's really what's driving this whole entire thing is we've taken focus off of service and love and kindness to pleasure creation, me, we're all me monsters. And when we become me monsters, Scott just said, my buddy Scott said, sips on Brondo, which is like, that's the drink from Brondo the Thirst Mutilator, right? But selfishness is really just kind of taken root. And that's always been a problem in human nature. But that's why I love this whole movement here, just being dad, the stoic dad, superhuman fathers, dad work, all this stuff of men who are seeing the writing on the wall. And they're like, okay, we've got to do something about this. Because if we don't do something about this, and clearly society, you know, the structured de jour society is doing nothing about this. If anything, they're perpetuating this and making it worse. And so it behooves us as these grassroots fathers to be like, shit, we've got to jump in and we've got to start, you know, setting a new standard and changing the dynamics. So yeah, man, just to agree with that, it's like selfishness and idiocracy, you know, is just kind of taking over society right now, which is sad, but at the same time, I'm glad that this movement exists, you know?
Yeah, I definitely, I see us at a precipice here with the narcissistic ways of the times. I mean, something has to give, right? And it was like when I retired last year, I remember getting online. I kind of lost my purpose. And I kind of touched with Kyle on this, is that like I lost my purpose and I didn't know what I was going to do. I moved to Costa Rica, and you know, it's the old story that you hear a lot of woo-woo people that him and I were talking about. It's like woo-woo people do that, right? And I went and just started journaling, started meditating, doing everything, right? And I've meditated for years and done all of that, but I found purpose then in being a father, in fatherhood. And I'm like, wow, fathers that are just lost. They're absolutely, they look like total ass in their families. And how can I help, right? And then that's when I found you, I found Kyle, I found High Speed Daddy, and some of these other bigger names. I'm like, dude, there's guys out here pushing. There's guys out here pushing big time. And not that we're all the exact same person, but we all have the same objective: be better, not make the next generation better, right? And it's like a big thing I think we just lost is what you kind of touched on: no values, no morals, or no standards in houses. And so how do we set that? How do we coach someone to set those into their house and bring that thing back, right? Coach them into their house. Because I was on I'm about to do a podcast next week with Forfeit Fathers. Not sure if you know them. And Ron and me were talking about a similar thing about values and morals. And it's just a lot of houses don't have them. And how do we teach the young guys to add them into their house if they don't have, if they weren't born with them, if their house didn't have them, and they're just kind of lost out there? Because you're watching fathers just look like ass. I go to playgrounds and fathers, their kids break down and they don't even know what to do. I'm like, dude, I'll take care. I took care of like 3 kids the other day. I got down on, got to their levels, spoke to them like normal humans. And the one father was like right behind me, just like stunned.
Just whatever. Just scrolling and eat, you know, whatever. That's a good question. So I actually just touched on this a lot actually in my podcast, other podcasts. So, you know, I'm a nerd. I read a lot of history books. In fact, I just started a fiction book yesterday, which is rare. Just a client of mine had recommended it to me, and I'm like, this is kind of weird. I'm reading fiction, but I read a lot of presidential biographies and just a lot of history books in general. I love history. That's why I love Stoicism. And people tend to hate on history, and they're like, you know, why do you love history so much? I'm like, because we don't want to repeat history, or we do want to repeat history, the good things and the bad things. So really, the only thing that we have that's tangible in this life that proves anything to us is the empirical, right? So I always pose this question. I say, look, let's just say there is no God. Now, I'm a believer in God. I'm a Christian. I go to church, you know, so for me, this is just a hypothetical. But let's just say there is no God. There is no metaphysical origin, priori of right and wrong that establishes moral good and bad, right? So in that absence of God, Numa, spaghetti monster in the sky, how do we decide what the best set of tools or morals is for us to live our lives by? How do we find that? Well, we go back to economics 101, which is marginal utility. We're looking at what creates the most amount of benefit for the most amount of people. Now, if you look at history, and if we are the dominant species on the planet, which I believe we are, it behooves us as that species to establish the greatest set of rules by which we ought to live. Well, what creates the most amount of happiness? Well, kindness, service, right? Sacrifice, family, love, all of these different things, right? And there's so much evidence of that. All we have to do is look at the last 2,000 years of history and be like, huh, okay, satisfaction, contentment, and happiness result from self-sacrifice and not being a selfish asshole. Very, very much so. And then there is an ample, if not more, evidence that hedonism, selfishness leads to cruelty and violence and sadness and ill content. So first, more than anything else, because I was talking about this yesterday on a Marco Polo with my group, I was like, you may not know what values you should have. And a lot of men, I don't think they do know, because they are constantly stimulated by butts and thongs and McLarens and money and possessions and status and title. And that's what's being shouted at them. And you have to ask the question, really truly dig. Now, maybe you want to fool yourself and lie to yourself and say, no, money, title, you know, possessions do make me happy. And all you have to say is like, look, really do some digging. Has that ever truly brought anybody happiness, right? Isn't it the oldest story in the book that you can't take it with you, right? That nothing you do or nothing that you obtain in this life physically can you take with you. No one has ever said on their deathbed, and I do this with men when they are challenging their own beliefs, I say, no one has ever been lying on their deathbed and said, man, I wish I would have had more meaningless sex. I wish I would have made more, you know, millions of dollars and spent it on hookers and blow. I wish I would have bought that McLaren. It's always like, I wish I would have been a better father. I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. I wish I would have listened to my wife more. I wish I would have spent more time with my brother who's now dead. I wish I would have served my parents more who are now passed away. So it's the story told over and over again. And I was actually mentoring a guy for a while. I don't anymore because he just couldn't get it through his thick skull. But it's like we were driving together, and he has like this complex where he really believes he's the youngest of like 7 brothers, and he really believes that if he becomes a millionaire, his brothers will respect him. Now, he's very dishonest in his business dealings. He's overweight, gelatinous, starts and stops 75 hard every 2 weeks. You know, he restarts it. And I suggested to him, like, you know, it might just be that your brothers will respect you if you become a consistent and congruent man. Yeah. And he was silent for about 10 seconds. He's like, nah, I think if I become a millionaire, they're respecting me. I'm just like, ugh, like, that's so false. It's so empty and it's so incorrect. Respect from men, like you're sitting in a KOA, you know, campsite. I don't give a shit what your income is. You don't give a shit what my income is. We don't care about that stuff. What we care about is, are we serving our families? Are we serving our children? Are we being good examples to our daughters and sons? Are we being good co-equal partners to our spouses? That's where respect comes from, not a million. No one gives a shit about that at the end of the day, right? And if they do, they're valuing the wrong thing. So when I, you know, connect with a client who is maybe not there yet with their values, I'm like, dude, just look at history. Just ask some super, super basic questions, and you're going to find that, oh, none of that shit matters. What does matter is all these things that brings me contentment. And what really draws them in at the very end, I say this, especially if they have kids. I say, when you're lying on your deathbed and you're starting to cross over into that next life, whether that's just blackness or there is a next life, you're starting to fade. The one thing that goes through your mind, every man, and whether you want to believe this or not, they say, what are my children thinking about me right now? What are they saying in their head about who I was and who I was to them? That's self-eulogizing. I'm trying to find like a plural for that. Self-eulogization maybe might be the word, if that's a word. But using that tool, Marcus Aurelius did that on his deathbed. And that's the only place, that's the ultimate satisfaction, when you can say, I was a man of consistency, of courage, of congruency, of morals. That's the very best thing. So I draw men into that, and it changes their mindset really quick. They're just like, shit, I've never really thought about that before. I really want that as the greatest of all gifts at the end of my life. Not the blow, not the women, not the cars, not the possessions, that satisfaction. So yeah, that's how I kind of draw men in to kind of change that mindset.
I love that, dude. I agree 100% with that. And, you know, it's people cast stones from their ego, right? And that's why they're at us often. And well, why I chose this life to go full-time RV, when I chose to go to Costa Rica, people were pissed. When I chose RV life, people were pissed. But the problem is I've been all over the world and I don't know where to settle down. And right now, with all the political crap going on, some of our favorite places are just overtaken right now, you know. So anyways, I want to talk about Marcus Aurelius that you just mentioned when he was on his deathbed. So Marcus Aurelius, possibly, if not, is the greatest Stoic of all times, right? Seneca's right there with him. I'm big into Stoicism. It was all over my walls in my when I was in the army. Anywhere you went in my office, there were Seneca or Marcus Aurelius sayings everywhere. Ryan Holiday books everywhere. Mm-hmm. And Marcus Aurelius wrote the greatest book probably ever, yet he was detached from his kids. So what do you think about that? If you're going to be a Stoic you're going to hold these disciplines.
Yeah.
Yet you didn't have the discipline to teach your son how to be a leader or how to lead the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple things to consider here. Number one, no one is a Stoic. We are only practicing Stoics. In fact, I was just reading this morning in my early morning readings about Seneca and how he's a very highly controversial figure, because he says despise wealth, but he was one of the richest men in Rome, right? Despise, all of these horrible characteristics, but he was the advisor to Nero, who is arguably the most terrible emperor in Roman history, right? And so everyone is contradictory, including Marcus Aurelius. But that, I think, is what is so beautiful about Meditations, is Marcus was just writing in his diary, like, shit, I need to be a better dad and a better husband and a better father and a better all these things. And how do I do that? I take from Fronto, and I take from Maximus, and I take from the writings of Seneca and Epictetus and, all of my different, and Atticus and all these different people in my life to be able to kind of do those things. Now, I agree that Meditations is probably the Bible of Stoicism because of that fact. It wasn't written as something that was meant to be like a pontification of Stoic doctrine. It was just like his thoughts. That being said, I think Marcus was by far the highest practicing Stoic that there could possibly be, because he was the Roman emperor, because he had access to so much hedonistic and pain relieving, pleasure creating instruments in his life. Yet he denied himself those things in most cases, right? I don't think he was perfect. That being said, I think that we can be the best we can be as fathers, but just like we are put face to face with these instruments in our own life, our children are also put face to face with those things. And there are proclivities and there are tendencies in every human being. Like my oldest daughter, funny enough, just yesterday, she's 14. She had this boy that really liked her. And, she said, oh, yeah, relationship, whatever. In her mind, she's like, I have a relationship with my dad, my mom, my sisters. That's a relationship. He took it as, like, oh, like, I want you to be my girlfriend. And she was so, like, good about just being like, nah, shut it down, walk away. My middle daughter, I'm terrified she's going to elope at 17. She's just like difference in personalities, right? Totally. She's so punk rock. She's always been against all authority, questions everything. And so I think that we can do our very best, but ultimately the agency and choice is always going to be up to our children. And I think for Marcus, that's kind of how it was. You've got to think Marcus was co-emperors with his adopted half-brother, who was a hedonist. And Commodus, who was the son of Marcus Aurelius, is looking up at the Roman court like, I can have anything I want anytime that I want it. So Marcus's biggest failings, maybe not forcing his son to come with him to all the fronts of every single war that he was in, maybe not forcing him to, maybe giving him too much freedom, but that is a Stoic too. The Stoic he's not compulsory, right? He doesn't force anybody to do anything. So I think it does still stand up with Marcus as a true Stoic, even though his son was a complete shithead and probably one of the worst emperors. Granted, the movie Gladiator's totally non-historical. Marcus Aurelius had no intention of returning Rome to a republic. Commodus was already emperor when he died. They were co-emperors together. So kind of some weird stuff there. But I think that it goes to show that what we say in my coaching group all the time is we're looking for progression over perfection. And it's really only up to us and our inner citadel and our existence to be able to live that life. So, if my kids turn out shitty, the satisfaction that I can have, at least, is that I did everything that I could, that I felt was right in raising them. So I think if there are any fathers out there who are like, yeah, my kids are turning out to be shitty, make some adjustments, but do everything in regard and in congruency with what you know to be right. And even if they do turn out to be maybe not the product that you want them to be, you can still have satisfaction that you acted morally and correctly with your values, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the only thing I'm going to red flag here, or not red flag, red team.
Red flag. Sure, yeah.
Red team in the Army, where I'm going to play the devil's advocate, right? Is that how many followers do you know that are like, I'm doing everything I can, I'm giving my best, but their best is shit. Mm-hmm. They say it the simplest way. They're lazy, they're eating crap, They're letting their kids eat crap. They're watching shows that are not good for the soul. Listening to music that's not good for the soul. Not getting out into the sunlight. You know, it's like they wake up, go right to their phone. They just have really bad habits. So I think what happens is, and what I always preach is, one of the first keys is self-reflection. How many people have just lost a simple, like, self-reflection? Just sit back. How do you really think what you're doing is right? Do you really think that's a positive impact on your kids? Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say there, because it's like, at the end of the day, if my kid turns out shitty, a little bit is on me. If I did my best, but I've also self-reflected, and I also did my best and be physically fit, mentally fit, spiritually fit. All right, now we're talking. Now I could say at the end of the day, all right, you know what? I did do my best. I literally put in the work.
Well, that's what the best really has to be. The best has to be your very best, and it does take introspection. You know, like I saw this guy on Instagram. I don't know his Instagram name or whatever, but he was out there posing next to Larry Wheels. You know what I mean? Like on stage, totally out of shape. I felt bad for the guy, but on his Instagram, just there is like this delusion that happens with a lot of men, where it's like, I talk to a lot of guys and they're like, yeah, no, I'm in great shape. I'm like, you're clear. I'm looking at your pictures, bro. Like those arms filling out that shirt, that's not muscle, bro. That's fat. You know, like you gotta be honest with yourself and really look in the mirror and see yourself for what you really are. I would say the only way that you can truly find absolute satisfaction is by practicing that. Like, how am I creating cognitive distance or introspection, looking at what I'm doing? So for me, I feel like sure, we're always going, because we're human, we're always going to look at ourselves and be like, I could have done more. But I'm always asking myself the question, am I shutting off the TV? Am I reading books instead of watching Instagram? Am I eating healthy? Am I getting in my workouts? Am I doing what I say I will do? And that is the biggest thing for children, I think, that will drive them to make correct decisions. Now, again, we can't make their decisions for them, but the likelihood is higher if we are men who make and keep difficult commitments to ourselves, right? When we walk into the kitchen and we've committed to hit our macros, and our kids see us totally throw it to the wind, they're going to be like, I can throw things to the wind because dad throws things to the wind. However, when they see you walk into the kitchen and you're tired, stressed, hungry, frustrated from your day at work, and you say, rather than eating this bowl of Lucky Charms, I'm going to eat the things that I committed to eat, your kids are going to be like, dad is a man of commitment. So even if they go on and make their own decisions, fall off the boat themselves, it doesn't matter, because they are watching you be that man of commitment. But you do have to be a man of high commitment. You can't just say, because a lot of guys think they're doing their best. Like you said, it's like, well, if you're fat, if you watch a ton of Netflix, if you don't wake up at 5 o'clock or earlier, if you're not providing for your family correctly, if you're not reading a book, you're not doing everything you can possibly do. And a lot of men will say, well, that's mean, and I'm just doing my best. No, you're not, right? Doing your best requires that you take action. You actually do something. It doesn't mean you're thinking about it. There's this metaphorical cliff, and I talk about this. If any of my guys are watching, they're gonna be like, Jordan just talks about this nonstop. It's annoying, but there's this metaphorical cliff, and we're standing on it, and there's this water below, and all of the benefit and all of the love and all of the health and success we're looking for is down in this water below. We've already made sure there are no massive rocks. In fact, we see people jumping off the cliff into this water below and getting all the benefit, yet we're standing on the cliff all the time saying, I'm working up to it. I'm going to get prepared. And every time we get prepared, we step back an inch a little bit. We're like, I'm not quite ready yet. I'm not quite ready yet. Well, the people who get the benefit jump into the water. You can't get any of the benefit unless you jump in the water first. And so most men are standing on the cliff saying, I want to be that eventually. I'll talk to a lot of guys that like potentially want coaching. What are you doing? Well, I'm just getting ready. Cool. I noticed on your Instagram, you've been getting ready for the last 5 years. When are you going to jump off the damn cliff and actually make a decision here? So I think that, yes, a lot of men struggle heavily with introspection. They struggle with cognitive distance and looking at themselves from afar. And they really struggle with what I call Uncle Rico syndrome, like Napoleon Dynamite. Like, back when I was in high school, I could throw that football over the wall. Like, shit, high school's been over for 20 years, man. Now you're overweight, you're gelatinous, you're victim mentality, you're constantly making excuses. And so, yes, I would say the only way to truly walk away from parenthood saying that you did everything is to actually have done everything, right? And you're still going to have some regrets there. But I would say, so no red flagging at all. I think that the agreement is there. It's like, unless you are doing everything you can do, you're always going to be filled with regret. And so many fathers are, that they're just like, shit, I should have done more, could have done more. And the sad thing is time is linear. So once you miss that opportunity, it's completely gone.
And it's funny because my wife and I, we were talking about the other day. I'm like, becoming a father, I just can never imagine how, like, I see parents and their kids hate them, like literally hate them, and they have no relationship. And it just blows my mind because I would do everything in my power to keep that relationship with my son forever, And it's like, in my book, I start the book by building a relationship with your kid, and I end the book with building a relationship with your partner. It's like those are two big aspects. And then, of course, discipline's in there and schooling and other things that you and I have covered a lot. Sure. But it's definitely, I'll say is accountability. These guys need accountability. And I think that's where you come in, and I do too, is that we offer accountability to them. It's like, hey, are you hitting these? I think that's what the 75 hard's great. I did 75 hard over a year ago, and I loved it. And I love just the checklist, right? It's like I'm holding myself accountable. And Andy Frisell talks about that, right? He's like, I didn't have to make a diet. You're holding yourself accountable. You're learning the skill of accountability. And so I think that's a big thing, is that a lot of men don't have accountability partners, or they're guilty by association, right? They have the same friends that do the same thing as them, and they don't get out of that. They don't shed that skin and move on to new friends that are bettering themselves, up-leveling themselves. And so their accountability partner is the same guy who's like, hey, let's go get drunk and get wings today. Yeah. Ridiculous.
Yeah. What's interesting is I think, and I never mean to come down on men, because I don't want them to think I'm coming down on them, but men especially have this lone wolf fantasy. They're just like, if I do it on my own, it means more, it has more meaning, and I'm tougher, and I'm bigger, and I'm stronger. And I'm like, you ever heard of the Spartans before? You ever watched the movie 300, right? You think that Leonidas and all of those soldiers just did it by themselves, that he just stood up to the Persians like it was like no big deal? The tribe and the group is much more powerful, yet a lot of men, they won't engage accountability groups like ours because they think that, and what it really comes down to is pride or hubris, right? There's this hubris in men that like, if he can do it, I can do it. It's like, shit, I couldn't do it on my own. I hired Kyle Carnahan, I've known him my whole entire life. It's not like I found him out of like a telephone book. I mean, this guy's a guy who I came up with, right? We grew up in the same town. Our families, our parents talk to each other every week. I talk to Kyle every single day, but I still went to Kyle and be like, I need some accountability. Now Wes Watson's my coach, and I need that group and that watchful eye on myself. So I think the myth and the lie that both of us want all men to know is that none of us get there by ourselves. We're not just like, we don't wake up one day, because I think, again, like women tend to judge women, men tend to judge men on that toughness level. It's like, well, if he could do it, I can certainly do it. It's like, well, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it on my own. And I didn't do it on my own. And I don't do it now on my own. I still belong to this group. I still engage Kyle. I still talk to Wes, my own guys in my own group. I have 65 guys that I'm accountable to now as a leader. And there are leaders in my group who are accountable to the group. And that's where the success comes from. In fact, my most recent transformation, Zach, I hit him up when he bottomed out. He was down, veins in the belly, veins in the chest, just killing it. And he's like, hey, I want to be honest with you. He's like, you're a great coach. He's like, but right after I signed up, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to cancel because I could probably do this myself. But he's like, then I got into the group and I realized all of this community support and love and motivation. He's like, that's what got me there. That's what got me there. He's like, obviously, you adjusted my macros and give me some mindset changes and some different assignments. He's like, but really showing up and being accountable to 50 other guys, powerful stuff, And so it's the lone wolf thing. It's a great idea, but it's never actually happened. It's always going to be some sort of level of accountability, even if that's to God, right? But somewhere we're all accountable to some higher level of, some watchful eye over us,
I agree. Jordan, I love this talk. I would love to keep going. I have to roll though, because I'm packing up the RV and like National Lampoons over here. I have to roll out
You're good, man.
to the next place. But it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Guys, if you don't know who I am and you're just following Jordan, I have a book called Fatherhood: The Art of Love and Leadership, and I coach on the side also. But definitely, brother, I hope one day we get to do this again. You have so much knowledge, and it was big time pleasure for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime you come through, man, we'll do some burpees and a Murph together or something here in Orlando, man.
You're almost getting me motivated to do these damn burpees. I almost, and it's funny because it's you. What I do at Last Soldiers is every month, and this is for years I've been doing this. All right, hey, every day we're going to do 50 to 100 push-ups. It depends on the month. I'll ask the guys, hey, are we up to 100 or 50? Or we'll just, it'll be something, right? And I almost, my buddies in my group, we're going to do 100 burpees. And I was just like, my bitch voice came in.
Hey, the bitch voice comes in for a lot of people, man. It's. I mean, West is the one who made me do it. So next time you're in Orlando, bro, we'll do 150 together. We'll knock them out.
The deal, brother.
All right, homie.
Take care.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Peace.
All right.